Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tech Showcase, Technology Showcase brought to you by the Call IS. We are starting on the cutting edge graduate student panels. And our first graduate student is Undraa Maamuujav from the University of California, Irvine. And she is presenting her research on rhetorical value of multimodality in L2 writing in the age of digital literacy. And after her talk, we'll accept questions. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to present on the rhetorical value of multimodal composing. It's a project that I embarked on as a graduate student, but the idea really was born out of my teaching, composition in first-year writing class, and experimenting with, different techniques to, kind of reinvigorate my writing class and make the writing more meaningful than just class assignment. So I'm happy to share the work, and thank you for coming to my presentation. So my presentation will actually have three, areas that I will be talking about. And as I said above, this integrating multimodality in writing and composition class really kind of began when I was teaching a first-year writing class. So I want to talk a little about the pedagogy and specifically highlighting how I reshaped the assignment to kind of integrate and include multimodal elements into the composing process. And then I will be talking about the exploratory study. That's the main focus, I would say, of my presentation. And that's the idea. I was just so excited about the multimodal project that my students produced. And this naturally became my graduate study research when I started my PhD program. And the intervention study is kind of a future direction. It's an ongoing kind of a research that we are looking to, conduct, in the coming year. So that's something that I'll actually talk about to conclude my presentation. So I want to start with a background on two things: multimodality and rhetoric. So multimodality is really a kind of a meshing diverse forms of alphabetic, auditory, visual, and semiotic, and some symbolic modes in writing. And the advocates of multimodal composition and composing often highlight four major areas. And the first one is its rhetorical value. Andrea Lunsford has done a lot of work on this one. And in fact, the Stanford study of writing found that students who engaged in multimodal composition demonstrated stronger connection to their audiences and stronger understanding of their rhetorical situations. Multimodal composing is also kind of looked into from the, especially in the field of composition, from the point of view that writing itself is multimodal. There's the embedded multimodality in it. A lot of times, like this, creating the act and process of writing involve creating mental image, visualizing, and etc. So a lot of composition instructors kind of argue about the inherent embeddedness of multimodality in writing. So the process of constructing meaning in and of itself is multimodal, and the affordances of multiple modes not only complement alphabetic writing, but help construct meanings and communicate messages more effectively. So, and now then there's the 21st century multiple literacy argument, and a lot of the, and recently the NCTE's revised curriculum framework actually included, or revised the definition of literacy, including multiple literacy, including digital literacy and media literacy and etc. So because technology has increased intensity and complexity of literate environments, The 21st century demands that a literate person, possess a wide range of abilities and competencies, and that's the many literacies. James Paul G. does a lot of work on the semiotic or importance and value of semiotic domains of multimodality. And by semiotic domains, he's referring to any set of practices that recruit one or more different modalities that carry different meanings. So for example, sometimes the kind of images and audio things, materials can actually evoke different kinds of emotions that are not necessarily communicated through words. So I think that's one of the, importance of, So the multimodal composition is, kind of valued in, different kinds of areas. But since my presentation and, research focus is on rhetorical aspect of it, I'm going to kind of move on to talk about kind of the rhetorical elements that we are looking into. When we think about, when we say the word rhetoric, we often think about, kind of 4 major elements, including the text, what to communicate, meaning and logic, and how to communicate, often tone and style, and we often kind of associate it with like logos, right? And a writer, and that is the rhetor or writer, the credibility, authority, and likability of the writer, as well as values, beliefs, and motivations, right? And oftentimes we associate it with ethos in the kind of rhetorical triangle. And then the audience, how audience receives and responds to the text. When we read our students' work, how do we feel? What do we get out, right? As a reader, not necessarily as an instructor. And also any kind of work that we read, then what do we, what kinds of feelings, does the text or the material, evoke? So those are the things. So it involves beliefs, emotions, concerns, interests, and assumptions. And often we kind of associate it with pathos or in the rhetorical triangle. And then there's the context, which is the external conditions that affect all these 3 elements. And often we think about social, cultural, historical, and sometimes personal and ideological significance of the work, right? So when you kind of look at, now let's think about traditional writing class. In L2, also in first year, composition classes, I taught in ESL, IEP programs in university, as well as first-year writing classes. And a lot of my writing classes had this sort of assignment right there, with prescribed topic. So I kind of, as an instructor, prescribe or give them specific topic to write on. And as you can kind of see, I know it's very small, but, usually giving directives of what to do and write a thesis-driven, well-developed essay, explaining this or discussing this, and et cetera. So that is a kind of a typical writing assignment in a first-year or academic writing classes. So, and when you provide or give your students this sort of assignment, oftentimes, what is the rhetorical situation in which they are composing, right? So so when we bring these rhetorical elements back into that, the text is essay. And we often ask them to write essay. It's an alphabetic, print-only essay, narrow discursive modality. So that's usually what the text is. The students, or the writer, is basically students. They don't necessarily see themselves as writers often. They see themselves as students who are writing essays for assignments or grade purposes. So that's the kind of rhetorical situation they're in. And then the teachers often see themselves as more of a grader or someone, we have a lot of different kinds of roles. We can be a grader, evaluator, comma cop, grammar guardian, and all these kinds of things that we do and, write comments, like, it takes a lot of our time, right? But we often do not necessarily see ourselves as readers or approach our students' writing as something, I want to enjoy reading this, right? So we're just like, oh my gosh, I have to grade these papers. And it's a burdensome task. So the act of teacher, or the teacher's role, is more of reading to evaluate essays for grade purposes. And then the broader, the rhetorical context is just a classroom. So the significance of the work does not go beyond classroom. It stays in the classroom. It's good in the classroom. You earn a grade. That's what it is. So I found that that was a big problem because writing is not necessarily for just classroom assignment. And when that happens, it kind of loses its value. And our students are bored and exhausted. I've heard so many of my students saying, I hate writing. And especially when it's an academic writing, oh my gosh, I hate academic writing, right? So that's one of the things. And I think this is partly why this is, because they see it really kind of limited, So what I did, I was myself, not just my students, I myself, after teaching like 12 plus years of writing and composition in ESL and, first year, university areas, I was exhausted and bored and, of reading essays that are somewhat similar, identical in structure, a lot of high paragraph essays, right? And also identical in content. They kind of have different ways of saying about the same things, in different. So I was just tired. And when you have 80 papers to read, it has this brain numbing effect, right? So I thought that it's not the students, it is me, it's us, it's my assignment that's actually causing this fatigue, both in me and in my students. So I reshaped my assignment. When I started the first year composition in the English department at Cal State LA, I was given a curriculum to write 5 essays throughout a semester of 5 different topics, and the class theme was race, class, gender, and plus. And I was, and then we'll kind of write 5 issues related to that theme. So by the time my students wrote 3rd essay, and I read multiple drafts of 3 essays, we were done. We were tired. And I kind of knew that, probably the quality of their work is going to decrease, not increase. That would be really depressing, by the end of the semester, when you see that essay is really not, well written. What did I do, right? So I decided to actually reshape the 4th essay assignment into a multi-modal project. So instead of this 80, plus of these kinds of essays, my students did this. So, and then it was so much enjoyable to read. My students worked very hard to put together. So what I did was that it was basically the same topic or, assignment, kind of prompt sheet, but I kind of told them, you can choose something that's relevant, meaningful to you, but this time you're not necessarily writing an essay, you're doing a multimodal composition, including audio, visual, and, elements into it. So I gave them a choice to do Canvas e-portfolio or just very simple newsletter template that come with Word and Page, in Mac. And that's very easy. They can just go ahead and, And then they can also do a Wix site. If they are really into it, they can create a website, Wix site, which is a free website to actually do that. So these were the options. A lot of the students, the website was something that a few students did, but a lot of the students did newsletter template. So through, just, interacting with my students on this project, I actually made some informal observations. They were much more emotionally invested in their writing than their traditional kind of an essay, more so. They did not write kind of the artificial essays, somewhat detached from their realities, that a lot of academic writing, and then they were much more emphatic about their standpoint. They really took like strong stands. So these were some of the informal observations that I thought worth investigating further, and that actually turned out to be my very first graduate, study, research on this one. So, and then there's other, important factors to consider. The changing landscape of literacy. We are teaching and dealing with and interacting with a different generation of students. They're very tech savvy. There's a lot, we're living in Instagram age, right? So I think, so there's a lot of that, and I also see just, kind of reading literature, looking over, there's this movement from, topic-based to project-based and essayistic writing to genre-based, kind of writing, as well as alphabetic-only text to multimodal composition. So I wanted to investigate further. I also found that there's a gap in research. There are quite a bit of literature in multimodal composition, both in the field of composition and L2 writing. However, not much is done in rhetorical value and elements and aspects. So I wanted to. So the purpose of the study is actually two-phase study. The first one is more of an exploratory case study using the artifacts of the students. And I wanted to investigate how students experience multimodal composing and what they say about their experience of composing modally. So I had 3 research questions: what unique content and organizational elements are observed in their multimodal projects. And I also want to know, how do students describe their experience of engaging in multimodal composition assignment? And what do students say are the benefits and challenges of engaging in multimodal composing? So to answer my first research question, I actually looked into students' artifacts, including all the 3 essays that they have written. So that's the alphabetic text only, to identify for each specific student what specific structural pattern that they're following. And did it change when they had to compose a multimodal, writing? So that's something, so I kind of did a lot of like cross-checking and, trying to see how, kind of the structural elements changed. And to answer my second research question, I looked into the written reflections. Students actually wrote from the very beginning multiple reflections at the beginning of the quarter about their own attitude towards writing, self-efficacy, motivation, why do they write, and what's, and etc. So, and then after each assignment, they actually wrote reflection as well. So those reflections were like really good data to analyze and look into how they actually, what did they say differently after they produced the multimodal project. I also did a survey modified from Daley Miller's self-efficacy and writing motivation, and I added components of, things like you were asked to produce this many assignments throughout the quarter. Which one did you like the most, right? And then I kind of listed all the assignments that they had to produce. And also there were questions about, challenges, benefits, and et cetera. So that was the survey that, data that I used to answer my third research question. What did I find through the exploratory case study? I found that the multimodal composition project actually had a lot of varied organizational structures. And I'll show some of the samples of my students in a bit. Breaking the essay into different sections was one of the things. So instead of kind of like paragraph, after paragraph. There were, they kind of just had subtitles and a little section and subtitles, but all of them kind of under the unifying theme and topic that they were writing about. So it was actually different. There were two or like few essays that's that kind of just put the essays. I think it looked like they just wrote an essay and then just added some pictures, right? So I think that's that. But largely it was like they actually did take it very seriously and did kind of disrupt the typical structure of the essay. I also found that there was the images and audio materials and things were actually very purposeful. Purposeful inclusion of images and graphs. They weren't just added for the sake of adding images, but they really communicated and complemented the alphabetic text that they wrote. So I saw that they were very intentional about like what pictures to add and etc. And I also found that there's a lot more personal experience and personal significance of the topic. Even a couple of portfolios included like family pictures. A student who were exploring gender issue, had a picture of her mom and 3 sisters, and just like women power, kind of. So that was really kind of just like very touchy and just very nice to see. And a lot of anecdotal evidence and personal reflections embedded and included into it. And I think those kinds of personal touch, brought a lot of like emotional appeal to it. I was really touched reading their work, and I really thoroughly enjoyed reading their work, and it was a pleasant experience. Positive stance toward the assignment. So after looking at the reflections and survey, everyone except 2 who did not respond actually picked the Multimodal project as their favorite assignment. And majority of the students responded that their Multimodal project was meaningful and had personal significance. Now, so this is an example of one, and as you can kind of see, there's the My Family status, a little excerpt on that, and then climbing the social ladder, breaking it into kind of different sections, and then, how is class affecting us, a kind of a different subtitle and section, but all this are under the kind of unlucky lateral class gap or issue that the student is exploring. And rising above all. So these are kind of, and then if you kind of look at, other world of color, this is kind of racial, students kind of, were pretty creative and included like lyrics and, or like a little poem from somewhere that kind of speak for, and, as well as their own, kind of introductory writing. So I think you kind of see this, and we don't necessarily this kind of style in academic writing. So now I'm going to kind of frame it in the L2 writing context, because I have always been an ESL instructor, and L2 writing is something that's just very close to my heart. And I've taught in both just regular composition course and an academic English course for international students. And I saw that a lot of the students who come after completing the academic English writing course to the composition course just have very difficult time, because composition is very heavy on rhetoric. So, and they just don't understand how to analyze or do rhetorical analysis of text and things like that. They don't even think that, like, why am I doing this, right? So what I kind of want to bring is a little more rhetorical knowledge and, into the L2 writing. I know that in the L2 writing, we focus heavily on language skills, and I know that it's very important for our students to build their language fluency and, proficiency, to be able to, survive in the academia, right? So, but I think the heavy emphasis on language often kind of create more of an essayistic type of writing, formal-like instruction, and alphabetic production, and not much of rhetorical focus. So I want to kind of, investigate and see how we can actually kind of harness the multimodal composing in order to improve the rhetorical knowledge and awareness of students, specifically purpose. Why do they write? What is the purpose of writing? And the specific audience who they write to, not just the teacher, me, right? So the future direction of the study is intervention study. We're planning an intervention study. We actually kind of started the survey and stuff with a control and treatment group to check the effect of multimodal composing on the rhetorical understanding and knowledge of students. So we're planning 2 sections of the course, first year writing, as control group, and 2 sections of the writing. It's basically 2 sections of the same course for treatment. And in control group, it's business as usual. They're going to be writing traditional essays, assignment, and then in the treatment group, they will be composing multimodal. With the exploratory study, it's too early to actually make any causal claims or say that, yes, it was the multimodal composition that actually had an effect on students so we need a control group. So I think that's why we're kind of moving it into an intervention study. And what I'm going to add to is it will become a mixed method, design with both qualitative and quantitative analysis. And we're also doing a pre and post test surveys. The survey, Daly Miller survey, actually is going to be on, self-efficacy at the beginning of the quarter and at the end of the quarter. So, and then we'll have follow-up interviews with the students, and and specifically kind of focusing on the rhetorical element, the self, the writer, audience, purpose, and the significance of their work in the context. So that's where we're heading, but and that's the future direction of the study. So, thank you and I'll take any questions if you have one.
Thank you, Ms. Undraa Maamuujav from University of California, Irvine. I'm just sorry for the students in the control group because they're not going to be able to enjoy the multimodal writing, right? Okay, so do we have questions? Oh, okay, just a minute, let me get
Presentation?
Oh, how can we access the slides? Are you?
I'm sorry, what?
How can we access your presentation, your slides?
Oh, how can I? Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll actually upload it into the app so that you can kind of,
You can find it in the app.
So.
Yes?
Hi, thank you very much. Was there any resistance from the school itself in using multimodal essay writing?
That's a very good question. In the English department at California State University, Los Angeles, where I taught or experimented this first time, I actually were given a greater flexibility. So there was not much of policing or just, kind of like, oh, you're not doing exactly what, we are. So I think there's much more flexibility. I see that is, that actually made what I did, happen. So I think, so there wasn't much of resistance, but I did, I shared my, work with colleagues and also the chair of the department, and they were actually very excited about it. So, however, in the academic English program, I taught as well. They have a very rigid curriculum, 2 essays per quarter and 2 prescribed topics. Everyone in the program write on those topics. So you can't really change the topic and stuff. So I couldn't have them to do a multimodal project, but what I did was I incorporated infographic so after they wrote their essays, they actually had to create an infographic to present. And that was not part of the curriculum, but it was something that I added, and I didn't think that it would become like an issue. So I see that in a lot of L2 or academic writing, credit academic writing in university-based programs, the curriculum is rigid, and I think sometimes you may have difficulty implementing this because of the uniformity of curriculum and etc. Yes? Infographic? Oh, so infographic is also kind of like a really presentation of ideas using visual and semiotic. There are free websites like VizMe and Easily. These are two websites that are free. Students can actually access and get free templates. And they have embedded templates with all kinds of images and also with all kinds of relationships. For example, if you're doing like problem solution, there are tons of templates that are actually for problem and solution, type of thing. So I think they can access it and then, have, produce a kind of a one-page or two-page infographic presenting their idea. So that kind of brings the writing more of communicative purpose, not just classroom grading purpose. Yeah.
Okay, thank you once again, Ms. Undraa Maamuujav. Next, we have Imelda Bangun from University of South California. And her topic is teaching metacognitive online reading strategies to adult immigrant students. Okay? Would you be able to?
He said I have to log
Okay, so next we have Ms. Imelda Bangun from the University of South Florida with teaching metacognitive online reading strategies to adult immigrant students.
Hello, everyone. I'm actually from University of South Florida, and I'm a PhD student in technology in education and second language acquisition. And I'm also a teaching assistant at Into, the English program at USF. Just an overview for today. I'm going to talk about the introduction, literature review, theoretical framework, methods, discussion, and limitation and implication of my study. According to Goodman, 1967, when you teach reading to your students, it should be as interactive as possible. So online reading gives you that opportunity to interact with your students in an academic text in a compelling way. Also, I want to focus on metacognitive because in the past, this topic is rarely being discussed when it comes to online reading. And also, I want to capitalize different various forms of L2 learners' interaction empowered by multimedia glosses and external links. In the literature review, it talks about metacognitive skills being taught in the classroom. So in one of my classes, I have used Rongchang or ESL voices or computer-based text and glosses, ESL Yes, EL Civics, ebook systems, and online multimedia literacy. I just go there. Can I just talk to them since they're my only audience, or I have to stay?
You have to say,
Okay.
yeah.
And also, Wang in 2016 talked about computer-assisted reading system, where it talks about online reading and where you go to read your text and where the text provides hyperlinks or link to dictionaries or different glosses. So there are 3 types of multiple glosses according to Lee and Lee in 2014. There is tooltip type glossing, frame type glossing, and concordance glossing. In the tooltip glossing, it means when you hover your cursor above the word, the definition will appear, will show up on the text. When it is frame type glossing, there is definition towards the end of the passage, and you can click on it and it will take you to the definition. Concordance glossing means they will provide you a sentence with authentic sentence to help students understand what they're trying to read, and also encouraging students to use contextual clues to define the word. The theoretical frameworks to guide my study is psycholinguistic theories. It explains that cognitive processes and how the brain processes a language. Multimedia learning by Mayer, 2001. It talks about students can learn deeply when there's words and pictures embedded in the text. And also social constructivism by Fosnot and Vygotsky. It explains that new knowledge is built or formed through social relationship and interaction, and also there's mediation in the learning process. The last theoretical framework guiding my study is the cognitive affective theory, and it is based on the CATLM, the cognitive affective theory of learning from media. It is also adopted from Mayer and Moreno studies. It explains that a learner processes incoming information through the use of visual and verbal information. The method of my study, I did a quantitative study, and I did a pre- and post-test surveys. I adapted the survey questions on metacognitive awareness inventory by Shra and Dennison. And I had 15 adult immigrants in my class. They're intermediate level students in a non-credit ESL program. The findings, so I did a 5-point Likert scale for the survey, and the finding shows that the p-value was less than the alpha level, which is 0.05. So it shows that the integration of call materials has significant effect on the development of the metacognitive skills of the students. Here are just some of the questions that I asked in the survey. For example, do you try to find as many ways online or offline resources as you can to improve your English? So they have to put 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. The second question is, I try to use search engine like Google on how to be a better learner of English. Another question is, I plan my schedule, so I will have enough time to study English online and offline. I look for people through emails, video chat, and chat room so that they can improve their speaking skills. Another example is I look for opportunities like websites, applications, web-based software to read as much as possible. So based on the survey questions, the students claim that most of them use these skills to improve their metacognitive skills, to improve their reading skills. The limitations of my study is I only have 15 students, so it was a really small sample size, so the conclusion might not be as robust as I would like it. And the length of the study was only for 1 semester, so my students might not be able to acquire the metacognitive skills in 1 semester. Pedagogical implications. So as teachers, what you can do in your class, in your reading class, you should teach your students how to acquire, how to go online, how to use different affordances, different technology to help them improve their reading skills. And also, teacher-educators should teach metacognitive skills to the adult learners so that they can improve their reading skills. And the integration of computer-assisted language learning should help adult learners to better comprehend the target materials with their cognitive, help them develop into lifelong learners. These are my selected references. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Imelda Bangun from University of South Florida, who brought us teaching metacognitive online reading strategies to adult immigrant students. Are there any questions from the audience? Okay, a lot of cheering. All right. Okay, next up, we have Ms. Siyi from Boston University. Her topic is Adult English Language Learners' Attitudes, Learning Purposes and Beliefs of Effectiveness Towards English Learning through WeChat Add-ons. purposes and beliefs of effectiveness towards English learning through WeChat add-ons. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you. Sorry. Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to this session. My name is Siyi, and I'm a TESOL graduate student from Boston University. Today, my topic is adult English language learners' attitudes, learning purposes, and beliefs of effectiveness towards English learning through WeChat add-ons. WeChat, though initially developed as an instant message app, has gradually developed with 1.04 billion users around the world. And though it was initially developed as an instant message app like WhatsApp, it gradually has thousands of add-ons, and the most WeChat category among them are educational add-ons. And today, I would like to focus on the mini programs, visual accounts, and group chats, three most visited ones. And you can see that it is the main interface of the WeChat, and these are the three add-ons. And before we move on to our study, I would like to let us take a glance of the WeChat add-ons. And you can see that from these images. On the left, the image is the mini programs. Normally, the mini programs are just hidden in the very top of the WeChat interface when we just slide the interface down, and you can see the mini programs instantly. And these are two examples of mini programs, one for speaking and the other for punch record of the grammar exercises. And second one is a visual account, which is for the reading. And actually, you can do a lot of reading exercises here from this, which is quite helpful and beneficial for English learners. And third is a group chat, which is on the very right. And the teachers can just answer student questions in the group chats, and they can also give lecture notes on it. Though WeChat has so many amazing functions, few studies currently focus on this, and these are studies that I searched for online, not many actually, and most of them focus on the group chats. The first one, Xu Dongjiang, who did a survey in 2017. Actually, they gathered the students, which are Chinese from intermediate level, and they just get together into a WeChat group. And the teachers offer them some video tasks, and they can receive feedback from the teachers in the WeChat group after classes. And actually, this study proved to be a success because it was very effective as the students said in their interviews and their questionnaire. And the second one, this is done by Lu in 2018. Actually, the second one is more beneficial than the first one because it focuses more in the whole English teaching process. In the first one, it just focuses on after class activities, but the second one is say that WeChat can be used throughout the class, like the preview and the in-class activities and the after-class exercises. And also, it says that it can improve students' English pronunciation because there is a voicing icon in WeChat, and the students can just press on it and to say their words in WeChat and to let their teachers to grade them after class, which is quite beneficial for shy students who are not so willing to say in classes. And the third and the fourth one actually focus on language exchange between Chinese and English speakers. And they gathered students from Australia who were learning Mandarin, and the students in Taiwan who were learning Chinese, who were learning English, and they just got together and to learn from each other, which is quite beneficial. And also, these two studies point out that WeChat has a very good function, which is an in-app translation, and it can just use there to click on it and to translate any sentence into English or Chinese and help them to communicate in a more effective way. Actually, from these studies, we can see that there are few of them, and most of them actually just focused on one of the very beneficial add-ons in WeChat, which is an instant message function, and that is just the most basic function of WeChat. So in order to dig into this part and to see the WeChat's acceptance, I just point out my research questions here. I would like to know what are adults, English learners' attitudes, learning purposes, and beliefs of effectiveness towards English learning through WeChat add-ons. And here is my methods. Last semester, I did a survey, which is a Chinese survey, have 12 questions, and I just designed it in the Mic CRM, which is quite popular in China. And the website is right here, and you can just still have access to it right now. And also, after I did a survey, I collect 42 participants' information, and I carefully read it and see there's one problem in that, because the participants say that WeChat has some help to them instead of help a lot. So I would like to think about what is some help. So I just do the interview, which is just a follow-up, and I just select 4 interviews who say that WeChat just have some help to their English learning, and I did a 15 to 20 minutes interview to them, and to further explore the reasons behind the survey data. And here is the original Chinese version of my survey. Here's the results. Actually, among all the 42 participants survey, we can see that most of them have held the positive attitudes towards the WeChat add-ons. They think that the WeChat add-ons can help them to make full use of their fragmenting time, and they can also help them to avoid procrastination and help them to be motivated and improve their efficiency. And also, and 20 of them actually held the negative attitudes, and they think that it might be too segmented in learning English through WeChat. However, we can see that the segmentation is the innate weaknesses of the WeChat, because in WeChat, the English learning information are inserted into it. So it cannot be so systematic like the class information or the book, which is quite as a whole one, but it's just segmented, so students cannot use it maybe just like the series of book, but they can, as we still have the choice to choose from the add-ons as we want, we can try our best to choose the ones that we think are the most systematic and the most helpful one to ours. Yeah. And this is a figure which figures out the ELL's learning purposes on official accounts. And we can see that 35 of them think that the students can read articles to increase their relevant knowledge, and 10 of them think they just followed as a recommendation of others, and 5 of them, they just simply like the style of the official accounts. And this is EL's learning purposes in many programs. And actually, we can see that most of them think that they can develop the learning habits through punching every day in the mini programs, which is quite helpful because the learning habit is the ones that help students to learn English in the long-term process. And also, 15 of them think that mini programs can help them prepare for standardized tests like TOEFL and GRE, because you can see that, like I mentioned above, the mini programs can help them to practice their speaking and grammar, which are all the skills that are important for their standardized tests. And also, a lot of them think that they are interested in learning language, and WeChat can help them. And from these 3 figures, we can see that most of them, actually it's more than 70% of my participants think that WeChat helps their English learning. But we can see that, as I mentioned above, some help, and that's a problem. And I just dig into it through my interview. And after the interview, I just gathered all the information into my a little book, and to see that we can see a lot of them, actually all of them, they think that WeChat has plenty of resources for them. They can choose whatever they want in WeChat add-ons. However, every coin has 2 sides. We can see that though they can get the information from the WeChat and they can take advantage of their segmented time, everything is just inserted and they do not need to download extra apps. However, they're just too segmented, actually. Yeah. But it still depends on the individual, as is stated by my participants. And they say that for the person who has strong motivation and with persistence, and they can just have access to the add-ons that they like and they most want to do exercises from. And that is very good for them, especially for the ones who prefer the e-learning style. However, for the ones who maybe prefer the traditional classes, it might not be so useful, yeah, admittedly. And for the learning purposes, if the WeChat add-ons just match their learning purposes, and they would be most helpful to them. Admittedly, there are some limitations in my survey and interview. Because they are all subjective opinions from my subjects, it might not be so objective because I do not include a lot of assessment tools into it. And also, as I just designed my survey and send it in my WeChat moment and send it to some WeChat groups, the participants just filled in the survey to get enrolled into this study so that it's very hard for me to insert some assessment tools into it because the participants' gender and their language levels cannot be controlled by me. And so actually participants are randomly selected, so it's have a lot of limitations. Yeah. So for the first studies, I think I can just maybe enroll some assessment tools into it and to get the participants into my study and to select maybe the person with the same language level and to let them to learn English and to test their language level beforehand and to test their level after and to see their progress. It might be more helpful. In conclusion, WeChat is still a beneficial supplemental app. And you can see that most of my participants still hold a positive attitude towards that. And it can avoid procrastination through daily punching in and to help them prepare for standardized tests and to read articles to increase their relevant knowledge. However, we should say that English teachers still plays an important role in the whole process of English learning because at least for the present, even for the WeChat add-ons, actually, we cannot live without teachers because we still need them to give the feedback for students in the WeChat groups and to design the exercises for students in the mini programs and to write the articles like preparation tips for students in the official accounts. So WeChat can be a beneficial supplemental tool and it can be work in conjunction with the normal classes, but it cannot just replace the role of the teachers, at least for the present. And that is all for my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Siyi. Do we have questions from the audience? Okay, so we've come to the end of our session on the cutting edge graduate student panels. We want to thank Ms. Undraa Maamuujav from University of California, Irvine, who brought us rhetorical value of multimodality in L2 writing in the age of digital literacy. We want to thank Ms. Imelda Bangun from University of South Florida, University of South Florida, USA, and who brought us teaching metacognitive online reading strategies to adult immigrant students. And we want to thank Ms. Siyi from Boston University, who brought us adult English language learners' attitudes, learning purposes, and beliefs of effectiveness towards English learning through WeChat add-ons. Thank you very much.